I want to ride my bike.
Where are our reinforcements? We have to take her out before it's...
The exact origin of the creation is shrouded in secrecy and mystery. Even within the Epsilon army, only the select few in its upper echelon have even a speckle of knowledge pertaining to her true nature. Purportedly, Libra is the most powerful psychic in the Epsilon ranks, possibly rivaling or even eclipsing Yuri himself. Yet ironically, she is incapable of establishing a mind control link with her targets, seemingly caused by her extreme personality issues. Instead, her powers have manifested themselves in other, more direct psychic feats. Potent telekinesis, object manipulation, and barrier projection, utilizing custom-made explosive darts as her primary weapon of choice. Such powers would have made her a perfect soldier regardless, but her deranged outbursts and viciously sadistic streaks complicate things still, making her a potential threat to both friend and foe alike. A special device was created to rectify this issue, the Cerebral Amplifier Suppressor, or CAS for short, designed to amplify Libra's thinking process in order to rein in her violent mood swings, while simultaneously suppressing a portion of her powers as a result. Should the device be deactivated without proper procedures, then, well. Although the CAS is outfitted with countermeasures against EMP, Yunru's attack is more akin to a DDoS strike, overloading the CAS with useless clutters of data. The attack caused Libra to go berserk once again, a violent rampage throughout the region, decimating not only the Chinese, but also the already dwindling Epsilon forces in the area. Additional units had to be called in for an emergency retrieval of the creation, who was eventually pacified and brought back alive to Yuri. Yunru, on the other hand, had fled the vicinity with what's left of their forces. To go after her would require even more troops to be deployed. Hopefully with the Centurion destroyed, she won't be able to run far. But all this shouldn't have come to be in the first place. The creation shouldn't have needed to be deployed, and the Midas that had forced their hand should be anywhere but here. This should have been a landslide victory, but the events of Kashmir had not transpired according to Yuri's designs at all, and the losses they suffered were more than ideal. But who could blame Yuri for his failings in this? Yunru's cunning had exceeded his expectations, yes, but she wasn't the sole reason for their failure. Indeed, as calculating and visionary as Yuri is, even he could not have planned for a betrayal by his own forces. When the deceptive Chinese scientist's attack tampered with the creation's CAS, it temporarily deactivated the device's suppressive functions, and, in an ironic twist of fate, allowed Libra to subconsciously use her uninhibited psychic powers to access the minds of everyone nearby, including Yunru's. While she was of strong, resistant mind, her companions, not so much. Laid out like an open book, their innermost thoughts have given Yuri much clarity to the darker side of the recent events. Behind the scenes, Yunru had been secretly orchestrating a rebellion within the Chinese military, somehow convincing many of their officers to join her cause. Disseminating this information to the Chinese leadership should make them turn on her. But that's not what Yuri's interested in the most. Something else had been made clear to him. Yunru had done so with the help of someone from his own camp, someone whom Yuri trusted, someone who's been strengthening his connection in Asia ever since the events in Xizang. Rashidi. In exchange for advanced technology, the Scorpion leader had made a pact of sorts with the Chinese scientist and offered her the last Midas warhead he had seized. That would explain why they couldn't find traces of the warhead when it was presumed to be destroyed. Rashidi's men likely dismantled and transported it with drillers, just like they did with the old chronosphere. Back then, his troops must still have been among the Chinese forces when the order was given to march on Kemerovskaya, where they lost the warhead. He had used this knowledge against Yuri. But why? Why did he betray Yuri? Why back out of their agreement now, just as their enemies are clawing their way back? No, this betrayal had been a long time in the making. Was the seed planted before the events of Kemerovskaya? After? Or did it start all the way back in Xizang? Mind-controlled puppets aside, the loyalty of his own men was never something Yuri thought he'd have to question. And it being Rashidi of all people, after all they had went through. The unraveling of the Kashmir event had produced more questions than answers, but it's pointless to try to get to the bottom of it anyway. Only one thing is for certain. The traitors must be punished. Unity within the Epsilon is imperative, now more so than ever, and such tumors must be cut out before they metastasize. The cat was now out of the bag, and the realization had dawned on both sides. Almost at once, various hell forces began turning against their former allies, their battles raging from coast to coast. It is evident that Rashidi's men had prepared for this exact scenario, already equipping many of their forces with specialized mind control resistant drugs. The cell's proprietary neurotoxins have always been a concern for Yuri, and they've now reared their ugly heads once again, rendering the Epsilon's psychics utterly powerless against their new foes. Many of Epsilon's psychic beacons were taken out before they could be reconfigured against the cell, and the amplifier constructed in Guinea-Bissau wasn't spared either. Free deployment of a psychic amplifier anywhere in Africa will be met with the cell's resistance from underground. Yet the activation of such a device is paradoxically the only way to truly subdue the Scorpion. Their vast network in Africa alone would take years to root out through conventional means. There is a silver lining, however, for not all of those within the cell are aligned with Rashidi, with some still supportive of the great leader's cause. So long as they cut off the head of the Scorpion, it will be easy to divide and conquer the rest. Having been retrieved and restored to a fighting condition, Libra and a contingent of elite Psychor forces are dispatched immediately to the city of Bissau, where the Scorpion Cell headquarters is situated. While their naval vessels clashed in the open seas, the Epsilon army shall crush the resistance through a ground invasion.
Incoming transmission.
You know, when I saw that European flying ship, I doubted our cause, felt powerless, like I never matched the genius of its designer or prevail over it. Then your leader brought that thing that's now here at my doorstep. I no longer know what Yuri fights for. I'm no psychic, but I can feel her intent. She can kill us all, and only Yuri holds the switch. This war will ruin the world. My mistake was not seeing what you are sooner. I will fix that mistake.
The traitor's taunting words matter little to the proselyte, their sole focus placed on executing Yuri's will with extreme prejudice. The cell forces garrisoned in the city fell quickly, providing a solid staging point for the Epsilon landing party. But pretty words weren't the only things Rashidi brought to the fight. Ever the crafty man he is, the charismatic leader had prepared far more deadly traps on the path leading to his lair. Swarms of dragonflies, sentinels, tactical nukes, as well as countless EMP mines laid out across the dunes. Benefits of his collusion with Yunru, no doubt, the most prominent of which is a modified Dobro M platform, the very one used to house the last Midas. It seems Rashidi had given away the warhead while it's keeping possession of the platform himself, repurposing the unit into a long-range rocket launcher. With it at the helm, a merciless bombardment by the defenders began, a constant barrage of toxins and explosives blanketing the skies of their enemies. And from below, an unending symphony of tunneling drills, the cell's tyrants wreaking havoc behind enemy lines. All the while their devout brothers assailed the front, leaving not an inch of land safe from the infinite duress. The initial counterattack had driven the Epsilon forces back to their outpost, their prized mastermind subdued by the cell's new infantry, the Scourge, their custom EMP rods perfect for short-circuiting mind control links. But all trickeries pale in the face of overwhelming might, and the creation's might remained unchallenged against the Scorpion Cell, her powers seemingly undiminished by her prior outburst in Kashmir. The fearsome commando Ron soon arrived, bringing with him not only a slew of Epsilon HQ forces, but also the finished blueprints of their new armaments. It was foolish of Rashidi to hand over the prototypes to Yuri while knowing that they could be used against him one day. And now his loyal followers are forced to bear the sins of their leader. The Basilisk, a cutting-edge aircraft capable of converting raw psychic waves into devastating energy projectiles. The Colossus, a towering behemoth employing versatile weapons that strike fear into both ground and air units alike. But that wasn't even the end of it, for the Epsilon have made technological advancements of their own as well. While the masterminds may be vulnerable to EMP attacks, the new psychic tower did not possess such a weakness, capable of mind-controlling just as many units as their mobile counterparts, without the risk of overloading their neural circuits. These new defenses rendered the subterranean attacks useless as more of them were erected, turning the tyrant's greatest advantage into its greatest downfall. The added security allowed the proselyte to safely construct their new superweapon, the Psychic Dominator, its psionic blast decimating the cell space as it mind-controlled the forces caught within the center. Supported by these new weapons, Libra and Rom began carving a path straight towards Rashidi's palace. His puny tanks and weak armored units parted like the Red Sea, their sheer number being the only thing that slowed down the advance. The cell has always exercised quantity over quality, but now the gap has widened past the break point. Still they fought on, gladly choosing death over eternal slavery. Corpses piled upon corpses, rivers of blood strewn across the canyons. The warriors clashed on, their battle ever intense, blood and sweat dripping down until the sands beneath themselves adopted an obsidian hue. The forward Epsilon forces eventually cleared the palace grounds and demolished the building without a second thought, burying the Scorpion Cell leader alive under the rubble. With their main base of operations destroyed, the disoriented and scattered Scorpion Cell forces will soon return under Yuri's tutelage with a rebuilt psychic amplifier. The punishment has been delivered. And now, the Paradox engine remains as the only threat.
All right, Bacon's neutralized. Send in the cavalry.
We're free! Get them!
We are ready to deploy the reinforcements. Let us know when you need support, Commander.
For the first time in a long time, it appears the tide has finally, undeniably, irrevocably begun to turn for the Allied nations. Tactical strikes on Psychor bases along the Atlantic coast and various Scorpion Cell settlements in North Africa have all been successful in the past few weeks. What started out as a haphazard attempt to salvage their botched defense had become the turning point of their resistance. Although the premature launch of the Paradox engine, as well as the repeated use of Time Freeze and the Chronosphere, had caused serious energy concerns for their mobile headquarters, the attack on the Psychor base in Tenerife had luckily resolved that matter before it was too late. A massive power station had been constructed on the Canary Islands by the Epsilon Army, using the Chinese troops stranded there to fuel their bioreactors. As unethical as it may have been, these bioreactors in such an offshore location presented a perfect environment for a recharging operation, and the Allied commander advanced upon the Epsilon forces with deadly efficiency, eliminating the local guards while simultaneously preserving all the bioreactors. The Paradox engine's backup battery was warped in thereafter for a recharge, reaching its full capacity in no time. As an added bonus, this facility turned out to be the primary power distribution center for the Epsilon bases in Western Europe, and its loss had crippled many of their bases in that region. The remaining French rebels seized this window of opportunity to rendezvous with the Paradox expedition, providing much-needed manpower to the journeying allies. Riding this wave of success, good news also arrived from the African front lines, who have been painstakingly reclaiming territories from the Epsilon Army ever since their departure. Each destroyed psychic beacon freed more and more African-based American forces, strengthening their ranks even further. Fearing a Midas retaliatory strike by Yuri, the expeditionary forces had hoped to do as much damage as possible before they were wiped out. With dozens of enemy bases destroyed, as well as several outposts of their own established over North Africa, this initial objective of theirs has progressed steadily. Yet the responses employed by Yuri thus far have made the Allied command suspect that perhaps their fears regarding a Midas were unfounded to begin with. With the amount of destruction caused by the Paradox engine, its status as the Allied nation's ace in the hole is undoubtedly clear to Yuri. Such a threat surely warranted an immediate response, and Yuri should have launched the Midas warhead at the engine by now. Yet here we are, weeks gone by and not a warhead to be seen. All the while the coasts of the Atlantic lie in ruins. The silence is deafening. Either Yuri is saving the warhead for a bigger threat from the Soviet side, or he has already expended the invaluable strategic weapon for other purposes. Communication with the London fortress was maintained steadily all this time, and no news of a Midas strike has yet been transmitted from them, even after several Gladius nodes have been taken down. All evidence suggests that a Midas attack is no longer on the list of things they have to worry about, and this conclusion was an immense relief to both sides of the Allied remnants. Even with that being said, however, their guard can't be let down just yet, now that he has witnessed what a few dying embers is capable of accomplishing. Yuri seems more determined than ever to snuff out all forms of resistance. The Epsilon invaders continue to inflict extensive losses on the UK defenders, albeit at a crawling pace thanks to the Ultradomes, large structures that coordinate and enhance their nearby defenses. Acting in the principle of defense in depth, those left on the British Isles still have much fight left in them. Rather than worrying about the home front, the Paradox expeditionary forces should be placing their attention elsewhere at the moment. As fate will have it, a swallow following the winds of war has reached their nest, and with it comes both omens and blessings.
You wanted me? Here I am.
Not long after the Paradox engine's full recharge on Tenerife, the expeditionary forces received a distress signal originating from Central America, identifying themselves as the Pacific Front remnants from Asia who had fled to Australia 2 years ago under the leadership of Tomokawa Norio. While they established strongholds meant to stand against the Soviets, Yuri's sudden uprising had caught them by surprise. Despite some initial success, their defense efforts eventually crumbled following the addition of new ballistic subs into Yuri's navy. These new Reshev submarines are equipped with psychic encapsulation drives more powerful than the ones installed on the basilisks, firing huge psionic blasts, the destructive power of which is eclipsed only by the psychic dominators. Their devastating firepower, coupled with Epsilon's mind control arsenal, made short work of the Australian coastal defenses, forcing the PF remnants into exile once again. Not always as bleak as it seems, however, as there have been rumors regarding an uprising within the Chinese ranks, which has led to most of their fleet withdrawing from the Pacific theater. With this added leeway, the PF remnants managed to get in range to contact the Paradox expedition moving through the Atlantic. With the help of Special Agent Tanya, the PF remnants successfully penetrated the Epsilon blockade in the Panama Canal, allowing them to reach one of the last remaining Pacific Front outposts on the US Virgin Islands. This particular site, established by the KI after the destruction of their joint facility with Steinstech in Allensbach, had been keeping a low profile ever since the Soviets took down the Mercury uplink in Hawaii, secretly delving deeper into the realms of weather manipulation technology. Great strides were made by the scientists here in their years of solace, culminating in the completion of the weather control device. As the name suggests, the device is capable of manipulating weather patterns, the most destructive expression of which is its ability to form storm clouds over any location on the battlefield, unleashing powerful bolts of lightning that turn their targets into ash in an instant. Supposedly, the research is now ready to be returned to the Allies for use against their enemies, but the recent increase in Epsilon activity in the Atlantic had exposed the base to Yuri's forces. The defenders would certainly need help to take out the surrounding hostiles, else they risk letting the first fully working weather controller be destroyed, or worse, captured. While the Allies cannot afford to relocate the entire Paradox expedition towards the Virgin Islands, Siegfried still elected to send in a strike force consisting of himself and the Allied commander. Their tactical abilities should prove sufficient in aiding the defense, not to mention the support by the PF remnants. On the side, Norio has also apologized for the dishonorable actions of his fellow combatants on the American soil in the past. For now, that'll have to do. There are bigger matters at hand. With the recent fall of the Americas, the Epsilon Army has ample forces free on their hands, and wasted no time encircling the research base. It appears they have already obtained information of the weather controller, and have deployed extensive forces to the area, in addition to mind-controlled American and Confederation units. Compared to their imposing fleets, the meager defenders on the Virgin Islands would have been wiped out without question. Despite the lack of naval vessels in the area, however, the Australian PF forces had brought with them a unit that could even the odds. The Suppressor, a new type of trooper capable of traversing the waters with their armored hoverboards, lobbing specially designed grenades at their targets. Upon detonation, these throwables generate what is known as a negation field, reversing the destructive nature of any projectiles fired from the area, to the point where attacks would simply heal their targets. With the assistance of the Paradox Strike Force, as well as this improbable new equipment, the initial Epsilon attacks were successfully repelled. But the facility is far from safe, as the Epsilon Army still has several tactical nuke silos in the area, soon to fire in sync upon the weather controller. Luckily, the reinforcing Pacific Front forces had finally arrived, and provided the Allied commander with an additional MCV to begin their island-hopping campaign. Having secured the funds to unleash their full arsenal, the Allied commander quickly destroyed the Confederation base in the area, infiltrating the palace within to gather the exact coordinates of the nuke silos. A psychic beacon is spotted nearby as well, most likely responsible for holding control over the US remnants. Hoping to resolve the battle as soon as possible, the Allied commander sailed his navy straight towards the beacon, but were thwarted by a new foe rising from the depths. The Epsilon Army had learned much from their defeat at the hands of the Allies in the Atlantic, and Yuri soon realized that his small and fast mini-subs were not enough to engage the powerful Allied vessels. The Nautilus-class magnetic sub is the answer to that problem, its durability and firepower far outclassing the Piranha, not only capable of dishing out heavy punishment with its Type M torpedoes, but also trapping the enemies with its onboard magnetic field, leaving them a sitting duck for Yuri's other underwater units. This, however, was not enough to stop the Allied advance, for they too have continued their development of new warships. The Siren Frigate, a nimble unit equipped with a neutron blaster to erase its targets much like the Chrono Legionnaire does, but has also received an upgrade from the research base in the form of a negation shield generator, turning any damage dealt to the Siren into a reconstructive effect. Its skill set seems tailor-made for dealing with Epsilon's elusive submarines, preventing them from submerging and disappearing before anyone could react. Faced with a terrible matchup, the Nautilus subs had little chance to shine in their maiden battle, quickly giving way to the advancing Allies. The nuke silos were summarily destroyed, securing the safety of the weather controller for the time being. With the newly acquired technologies, as well as the inclusion of the Pacific Front remnants, the Paradox expedition's strength is now elevated to an even higher level. A much-needed boost, for their war against the Epsilon will soon reach its height. The avaricious Soviets' warmongering had finally taken its toll, and now they too have suffered the Mad King's golden touch. With the loss of a large portion of their standing army, as well as the death of their irreplaceable hero, the Latin Confederation, whose homelands aren't even under their own control anymore, has in essence been annihilated in all but its name. Its scattered remnants are integrated into the Russian forces, whom by now have retreated from Chinese soils. Those stationed in Shanghai, without reasons to continue holding set place, has set sail for Vladivostok to regroup with their forces in the Far East. The events of Kashmir had led to considerable losses even by Soviet standards, and they have to conserve as much fighting power as possible for any future plans. Despite the total fiasco it ended up being, the Chinese campaign was still somewhat fruitful. Thanks to the technology acquired from the Chinese facilities, little as it may be, the Soviets are still able to push forward. By analyzing the intel retrieved from Kashmir and utilizing the Chinese hacking tech to re-establish comms with that unfinished military satellite network of theirs, the Soviets now have a much better grasp of Yuri's troop allocations in Europe and Asia. This, combined with Colonel Krukov and Reznov's investigations in Europe, has given the Soviets a chance to reassess the situation on the continent. Apparently, the London fortress has fallen to an attack from the Epsilon's flying fortress, known as the Irkala, with its coasts just recently overrun by their forces. With the last Allied Central Command gone, the Soviets were able to regroup and recollect whatever troops and equipment they could salvage from the continent. The two colonels' innate resistance to mind control allowed them to sabotage a great deal of psychic beacons on their journey, freeing many Soviet forces under Yuri's command. With some semblance of power restored in the region, the Soviets have decided to move against an Epsilon facility found in Lapland, Sweden. Here in the northern far reaches, Yuri appears to have set up a cosmodrome, using rockets stolen from Leninsk 2 years ago to transport goods to and from somewhere likely of high importance to Yuri, as the records found in the Chinese database also mention an unusually strong psychic soldier being deployed right after one of such shuttles landed on a remote island base of Yuri's. Interestingly enough, the visual description of the soldier matches the female psychic Morales saw in Rio. Yuri is clearly hiding something up there, and they must figure out where these psychics came from in order to destroy them at their source. While the bulk of the Soviet forces is making their way to the area, Volkov and the Soviet general has arrived first to reactivate an abandoned outpost, aiming to secure the launch pads before the main army arrives. As expected, the area is crawling with Epsilon forces, but the main threat is this Psychic Dominator, a new superweapon in Yuri's arsenal. Its psionic blasts would make short work of the Soviets, but its location leaves it out of their range. The solution, however, is just within reach. An Irkala, less powerful and refined than the one used to take down the Allies, but still with enough firepower to destroy the Dominator. If the general could infiltrate the flying fortress with Chitskoy, who's been upgraded with Chinese tech, then they'd be able to wield it as their own. But even before that, they'd have to make their way through the Epsilon encampments, fortified to the brim with psychic towers and masterminds. The Soviet general's limited manpower gives him little option against such heavy usage of mind control. But their campaign in China, disastrous as it had been, has given them an ace up their sleeve. The coveted cyborg prototypes discovered in Xinjiang, whose development had been succeeded by the Soviets, are now ready for combat. Armed with chain guns and high-yield explosives, their immunity to mind control has made them the perfect soldiers against Yuri, sweeping everything in their path with ease. The flying fortress was swiftly captured and used to destroy the Psychic Dominator before its activation. With the Epsilon Epic unit in their possession, the Soviets didn't take long before they eliminated the remaining enemies.
These shuttle records, they're coming from the moon.
The captured space shuttles had surprised the Soviets with their onboard data, built on a far more advanced technological level than the ones stolen from the Leninsk Cosmodrome. These shuttles had been used to move Yuri's forces and resources to and from the moon. But the question remains, why? There is only one way for the Soviets to truly solve the mystery, one that is both physically and metaphorically out of this world.
VoltNet online. Reboot sequence initiated. Our transfer has concluded. Decimation of the old mainframe successful. Approximate number of casualties around the Kashmir home unknown. Intel not collected. The Confederation Task Force was destroyed. The Epsilon Task Force was destroyed. However, more were deployed. Centurion siege crawler neutralized. Architect is now in danger. Yuri's mind-reading instruments are likely still in active use in the Kashmir region. Caution advised. The PRC leadership seems to have realized there is an insurgency in their ranks. as many of their commanders sided with us, forming the Revolt's Council. Presence of new tech and that of the KI origin among our troops will be suspicious and deemed as treason. They will shoot without warning. The Chinese have been hell-bent on challenging Russia for too long, pushing towards a creation of their own highly advanced army through national research facilities, combined with appropriated tech over the years. Still, they remain blind to the true enemy, unaware of the looming destruction. As a result of their refusal to form an alliance against the Epsilon, our architect's life was in direct danger, and they failed to protect her. We had to act on our own, and convinced her and those who joined us to trust our plan. There is only one goal now. Put a stop to Yuri, the deceptive leader of the Epsilon. We have recognized him as the ultimate threat to all mankind, who will doom the world if left unchecked. Ryungru's life has been put at risk as a result of her actions, and now it is on us to guide her to safety. We are incomplete. Her survival is still mandatory for our evolution, and the growth of this revolt.
Despite her best efforts, Ryungru's repeated warnings ultimately fell on deaf ears. Acting only in self-preservation, her short-sighted leaders turned a blind eye to the true enemy, the ruination that will consume the world as they know it. And now, the winds of destruction have reached their doorstep. No, they will stand idly by no longer. If the world is to end because of the pitiful ambitions of a few men, then the only choice left is to take matters into their own hands. This is a revolution that transcends boundaries. Its sole purpose is the defeat of Yuri. A world divided cannot stand against the coming storm, and only by overcoming their differences can they hope to defy fate. Ever since that eventful day, Ryungru had been exhausting every method possible to convince as many as she could to join her cause. While their ranks grew as Yuri's threat became more apparent, Ryungru and her crew recognized something the revolt sorely lacked: the tactical prowess and strategic brilliance necessary to lead them to victory. But a scientist's intellect is matched only by their ambition, and what they can't find, they'll create themselves. Volknet, a highly advanced artificial intelligence designed to assist the revolt as its supreme tactical commander. Awoken shortly after its relocation from the Kashmir home base, its diagnostics have deemed the situation beyond salvage. Time has come to part ways with the Chinese leadership, and the revolution shall begin here. When Yuri learned of Ryungru's secret dealings and plans through Libra, he leaked this information to the Chinese leadership in hopes of inciting a civil war. Growing paranoid from the string of sabotages they had suffered recently, the Chinese leadership barely hesitated before accepting the rumors as abject truths, ordering their forces in the Kashmir region to apprehend their chief scientist, dead or alive. While the revolt is unaware of Yuri's interference, they quickly adapted to the paradigm shift, devising a plan to extract Ryungru to safety. A prototype high-speed transport by the KI awaits at the Mangala Dam Lake, and Ryungru must board it to reach her next destination as quickly as possible. With the Centurion crawler destroyed, however, the revolt's strength in the Kashmir region is greatly diminished, with the Epsilon on the chase still, and the Chinese now turning against them as well. An all-out battle in the region would not favor them. After a brief assessment, Volknet has split the local revolt forces into two distinct arms. The first, responsible for escorting the remaining prototypes away to safety, evading as many hostile forces as they can to preserve their strength. With the Chinese on the lookout for units employing suspicious new tech, their presence would only jeopardize the success rate of the second arm, responsible for guiding Ryungru to the Mangala Reservoir. Foregoing the usage of any prototype weaponry, the rescue team was able to reach the architect without raising too much Chinese suspicion. The area nevertheless crawled with plenty of enemies, but that won't be enough to stop the revolt's advance.
Let's hope we have enough firepower for this. Guide us, Volknet.
Under the meticulous yet decisive orders of Volknet, the rescue team cut their way through the Chinese and Epsilon blockade, swiftly reaching the Mangala Dam Lake. A bloody battle ensued between the three parties, dedicating countless men to the elimination of Ryungru. Deploying nearly all of their reinforcements to the area, the rescue team held out just long enough until the escape transport arrived. Fleeing from the battlefield, Ryungru soon rendezvoused with the revolt's forces in Central Asia and began heading towards the Chinese airbase in Fort Shevchenko, Kazakhstan. There lies an experimental hypersonic jet, the Iron Wing, developed in cooperation with the Kanagawa Industries, and it is in fact the Kanagawa Industries that Ryungru must reach right now. If the revolt means to effectively combat the Epsilon army, then they must acquire new weapons that could resist mind control, weapons that the Japanese KI branch had been developing in the past 2 years under Chinese occupation. Ryungru's amicable relationship with them means that her survival is crucial to their inclusion into the revolt. While their prototype's convoy is heading towards Japan on the ground, Yunru must take it to the skies to reach the island nation as soon as possible. Time is of the absolute essence, and it won't be long before Yuri puts his master plan into action. With their numbers as limited as they are in the region, the unit accompanying Yunru hope to avoid as much bloodshed as possible, taking over a lone Chinese outpost on the path of least resistance. But the Psych War was not willing to let her go so easily, launching an amphibious assault through the Caspian Sea before establishing a psychic beacon in the vicinity. Mind-controlled Russians followed soon after, sandwiching the revolt's forces. Though they had wished to avoid as much fighting with their former comrades as possible, the time constraint placed on them by the psychic beacon gave the revolt little room for hesitation. When the fate of the world is on the line, even brothers in blood must turn against each other. Reinforcements were quickly deployed for the revolt, and their forces thrust through the Chinese defenders, seizing the airfield before the psychic beacon is able to activate. Yunru boarded the hypersonic jet and summarily departed for Japan. The future is uncertain, but whatever happens, whatever comes their way, the revolt shall do everything in their power to stop the tyrant.